So, with that down out of the way, that'll bring us into the second main topic. The second main topic is what is Arsenal going to have to do for the rest of the season to make to the Champions League spot. We're going to transition over to past me to talk about it for the next 10 to 15 minutes and talk about math and points. One thing to keep in mind, like I said, I recorded this yesterday before the Chelsea and Arsenal match took place today on Wednesday, February 10th. I recorded it on Tuesday, February 9th. That's something big to keep in mind as you're listening to the segment, or the main topic. So we'll transition and we'll get into it. Bye.
All right, guys, thanks for making the time jump with me. You're talking to Past Bryce now because I'm recording this the day before the actual podcast recording. But, anyways, let's get into the second main topic. The second main topic is what must Arsenal do for the rest of the WSL season to make it to the Champions League? This question is inspired by VivMeetama11, who can be found on Instagram. Shout out to you. I appreciate you asking the question because I had a ton of fun running the numbers for this one. So, this question is inspired by the fact that unfortunately Arsenal lost to Manchester City. It's unfortunate depending on who you ask in the WSL table, but nonetheless, it kind of begs the question. Arsenal are outside the Champions League spots looking in, and the season's starting to wind down. There's about 9-10 games left, depending on which team you are. So, from a statistics, numeric, and points scoring perspective, what do you have to do in order to climb into the top three and make it to the Champions League for next season? Because I would argue Arsenal at a tipping point, so let's actually run some numbers and see how that goes. Just providing a little bit of context around this, given all of the transfer rumors, the morale at the club, I thought this analysis would be a little bit uplifting for all my Arsenal fans who are out there watching, so I hope this helps lift your spirits a little bit. Let's get right into it. So like I said, there's 9 weeks left of the season, which means for all my Arsenal fans, there's still plenty of time for the team to turn it around. Winning cures everything, and that applies to any sport, no matter which team, no matter how low the morale is or whatever. So don't worry, my Arsenal fans, there is hope for you yet. So, while many other teams might have only 9 games left while many teams only have 9 games left to play because there's 9 weeks left in the season, Arsenal actually have 11 games to play remaining. Remember, they have 2 games in hand because they had 3 games in a row that were postponed due to COVID, due to the pitch not being ready and equipped to handle the weather. So that makes up for the 11 games. So let me frame kind of my argument where I'm coming from and how I'm calculating these points. So for the sake of this particular main topic, I make an assumption to start out. First, I'm assuming that Arsenal is going to win out. Whether or not that's realistic, that's a whole different story, but I'm making the assumption that Arsenal is going to win out. That, in turn, would bring them to 56 points in the table until, or when the season comes to a close. So they'll have 56 points by the time the season ends. However, I'm also making the assumption that they're not going for the league title. I'm making the assumption that they're just going for a Champions League spot. What do they have to do to make it to the Champions League, which means just take in the top 3. So let's start off with the absolute worst case scenario. What if Arsenal went out, but also City, United, and Chelsea also went out? Well, then, of course, that means Arsenal will not make it to the Champions League because they're behind on points right now, and if everybody wins out, then they have no shot. But the thing is, that's actually not possible because Arsenal play Chelsea and Man United at some point for the rest of the season, so it's not possible that all 4 of them went out. So there goes that worst case scenario right at the window. I just disproved the worst case scenario for Arsenal, so that's a good bit of positivity to start. Let's start off with what will it take for them to overtake Manchester City. Manchester City is currently 3rd in the table. I'm going to double check their points really, really quickly. It looks like they have 30 points and Arsenal have 23. What's it going to take if Arsenal win out? What does Manchester City have to do to drop down below Arsenal in the table? So City is going to have to drop 4 points, it looks like. Whether it's losing a match and drawing a match or just drawing 4 matches, either way that would work. As long as they drop 4 points and Arsenal would better them on goal differential, then that would put Arsenal ahead of them and get them into that 3rd spot. The goal difference is a big, big deal, and with how tight the top of the table is and how high goal differentials have been this season,
Goal differential is going to come down to be key for a lot of these scenarios, so that's something definitely to keep in mind. The other option is that City could drop 5 points, which means lose 1 and draw 2, and then that would mean Arsenal would overtake them on points. So there's that as well. The good news for this particular scenario is that City struggle against teams that are just as good on paper and also talent-wise, and they play Arsenal I'm sorry, City still have to play United and Chelsea before the season's over. This Friday, City's going to be playing United in the derby, and last time out, they drew to them. So there's a little bit of hope there for Arsenal fans if City can just drop points against United. And then plus, later on in April, City's going to be playing Chelsea. That's going to be a Goliath of a match. It's going to be really, really big. So there's a decent chance there then for City to fold at least a few points. But what will it take for them to overtake Manchester United? So, Manchester United, it looks like, is going to have to drop 3 points, provided that Arsenal wins out for the rest of the season. So, that would mean if Arsenal were to beat Man United and win out, then they would go into the Champions League spot, which is really, really interesting. If United were to lose just one match and win every other match, it would bring them to 56 points. And Arsenal would then be tied on points by the end of the season and go ahead on goal difference. I'm just going to remind you guys, I have, for this particular argument, Arsenal winning out, meaning they will win every single game for the rest of the WSL season. I'll go into more scenarios about that in a little bit, but just for this scenario, pretend that Arsenal is going to win out. So if they do win out, that means they will have beaten Manchester United, and then that would propel them into that Champions League spot. So there's that. What will it take for them to overtake Chelsea? That's the third team who is ahead of them and also number 1 in the table currently. What will it take for them to overtake Chelsea, provided that Arsenal went out? Well, this one's going to be probably the toughest of the 3. Chelsea would have to lose 2 or draw 6, meaning that they have to drop 6 points between now and the end of the season. And I don't know if you guys have been listening or watching, but Chelsea's only lost once this season and only drawn like twice. So I don't really see that being very likely. However, there's really good news because Arsenal is going to be playing Chelsea tomorrow, which there's a big, big opportunity for Arsenal to gain some ground and gain some points. So tomorrow's match is going to be huge. I'm recording this the day before when I normally record because a lot of my arguments and assumptions are going to be valid only until tomorrow because Arsenal and Chelsea play tomorrow. So that's why I'm recording this early. I probably mentioned that in tomorrow's recording. But anyways, I'm sorry for getting off on a tangent there. Arsenal play Chelsea, and Manchester City also play Chelsea. So if Arsenal beat them and City beat them, well, then there's a chance right there. And Arsenal, as of right now, is ahead on goal difference. So that's actually a distinct possibility, provided Arsenal win out. I want to be clear on that. Chelsea have only, like I said, Chelsea have only lost once and drawn twice this season. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that would play out should Arsenal win out. Now, all of that argument is going to frame the rest of these scenarios here. So we've covered the first scenario, which is what happens if Arsenal wins out. Will they make the Champions League? The answer is yes. If they win out, that will mean they will have the highest chance to best Man United and make it to the Champions League. So that's just kind of summarizing what happens if Arsenal wins out. We're going to shift a little bit here and hypothetically say, what if Arsenal drops 1 point, meaning that, actually, I don't even think that's mathematically possible. What happens if Arsenal just drop a single point? Let's get into that a little bit further. So then that would mean that Arsenal at the end of the WSL season would be at 55 points. So for them to overtake City then, that would mean that City would have to drop 5 points and Arsenal would have to be better than them on goal difference. Or City could drop 6 points, and then that would propel Arsenal up into the top 3 because they'd be ahead on points. What would it take for them to overtake United? United would have to drop 4 points, but Arsenal would have to stay ahead of them on goal difference. Or alternatively, United could drop 5 points as well. And like I said, Arsenal play United still this season, so that's going to be a huge match for Arsenal going forward and how this plays out. But what would it, if they drop a point, what would it take for them to overtake Chelsea? Chelsea would have to drop 7 points. but Arsenal would have to stay ahead on goal difference, or Chelsea could drop 8 points, thus propelling Arsenal forward because they'd be ahead on points. So that's how it would shake up if Arsenal just drops 1 point, which that would be meaning drawing or losing a match. That's at least 1 point. Now, let's shift a little bit further. What happens if Arsenal drops 2 points? In that case, Arsenal at the end of the WSL season would be at 54 points. So, if that were to happen, what would it take for them to overtake Manchester City? Manchester City would have to drop 6 points, in which Arsenal would have to be better than them on goal differential, and then they would move up. Or City would have to drop 7 points. You can do whatever scenarios you like to come up with those 6 or 7 points, but that would have to that's what would have to happen if Arsenal drops 2 points. What would it take for them to overtake United in that particular case? Well, United would have to drop 5 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference, or United could drop 6 points. Which, like I said, if Arsenal beats United, that likelihood becomes really, really high. Or not really, really high, I guess. It becomes a lot more likely if Arsenal can just beat United. What would it take for Arsenal to overtake Chelsea if Arsenal drops 2 points? Well, Chelsea in that case would have to drop 8 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal differential, or Chelsea would have to drop 9 points, meaning lose 3 matches or draw every single match for the rest of the season. To be blunt, that's not going to happen. I don't see Chelsea dropping very many points for the rest of the season unless Arsenal beats them and shocks us all tomorrow for the match, which I hope kind of happens because that would be really, really sweet. Especially since I'm a Man United fan, so I'm a little biased here. But anyway, stick with me here, guys. That brings us through the scenario of what happens if Arsenal drops 2 points for the rest of the season. What would happen now if Arsenal were to drop 3 points for the remainder of the season, meaning that they lose a match or they draw 3 matches and they win the rest? Well, that would mean Arsenal would be at 53 points. With Arsenal at 53 points, what would they have? What would City, United, and Chelsea have to do for Arsenal to overtake them? Let's start off with City again. So City would have to drop 7 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal differential. Or City could just drop 8 points. United, for Arsenal to overtake United, provided that Arsenal drop 3 points, United would have to drop 6 points, which would be losing 2 matches or drawing 6. In that case, Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference, and then they would overtake United in the table for that Champions League spot. Or United could just drop 7 points, in which Arsenal would be better on points at the end of the season and overtake them in the table. Now, lastly, if Arsenal drops 3 points, what would Chelsea have to do to be overtaken? Chelsea would have to drop 9 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference. Or Chelsea could drop 10 points, in which Arsenal would overtake them in the table on points automatically. So, if Arsenal drops 3 points, meaning if they lose a match or if they draw 3 matches, it starts to become a lot tougher for them to get to the Champions League, because then at that point you're hoping at minimum that any one of these 3 teams drops 6 points, meaning they lose 2 matches or they draw 6. That at minimum, that would be the scenario if they overtook United. So if Arsenal loses again at all for the rest of the season, or it draws a few times, the picture becomes a little bit murkier for their Champions League hopes. So every game really, really counts when they start dropping 3 or more points, which can be kind of scary. But let's dive into one more scenario. Let's dig a little bit deeper. We're going to jump here a little bit to what happens if Arsenal drops 6 points, meaning if they lose 2 matches or if they happen to draw 6 out of their remaining matches. That would mean Arsenal would be at 50 points at the end of the WSL season. So what would happen with City, United, and Chelsea for them to be overtaken by Arsenal? In that case, City would have to drop 10 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference. Or City would have to drop 11 points. In that case, Arsenal would be better than City on points. What would have to happen with United? United would have to drop 9 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference. Or United could drop 10 points, in which Arsenal would overtake them just on points alone. Lastly, what would Chelsea have to do in that case? Chelsea would have to drop 12 points, and Arsenal would have to be better on goal difference, or Chelsea would have to drop 13 points for Arsenal to overtake them in the table. So, guys, like I said, I'm just going to kind of sum this up. If Arsenal drop anywhere between 3 and 6 points, the climbing the hill to make the Champions League becomes a lot more difficult. However, they have a really good opportunity against Chelsea and Man United for the rest of the season to gain a ton of ground. Those are going to be some must-win matches for Arsenal, and I believe that they can do it. It's just they're going to have to kind of go into desperation mode a little bit and scratch and claw their way for the rest of the season in order for them to do it. I think they have the talent to do it. Will they do it? That remains to be seen. Now, with all of this in mind, what do I think Arsenal fans should hope for? First, I think Arsenal needs to, at minimum, beat or draw against Man United. You can't lose, because if you lose, that's when those big point scenarios start to trickle in, where you're hoping that after you lose to United, that they drop 6 points the rest of the season. That's a tough ask, especially with United, Chelsea, and City only really losing once or twice apiece this season. That's a pretty big ask. So for me, they're going to need to beat or draw against Man United at minimum. At least with a draw, it keeps a little bit of hope alive. If they keep more hope, though, if they end up beating United later on in the season. So that is going to be a very, very interesting match. I think we'll have a little bit more clarity into the table by then, because I don't believe they play United for at least another month. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. But what really matters in this equation is let me rephrase, back up. What I don't really think matters as much is if they draw to Chelsea. If for whatever reason they played them around, they draw to Chelsea and they drop a couple points, I still think it keeps them in the running given the scenarios I described below. Because if they draw to Chelsea, then that means they've dropped 2 points. And in that particular case, then, they would just need United to drop 5 points for the rest of the season, which, if they beat them later on in the coming weeks, then they would gain ground on that, and then United would just have to draw 2 more times, and they're in. So I think what I'm saying is, as an Arsenal fan, hope that they win out, because that becomes the easiest case scenario throughout the rest of the season, and you will make it to the Champions League. But if that's not a realistic hope, then I would say hope that they draw to Chelsea tomorrow when they play them on Wednesday night. That's Wednesday, February 10th. And then beating United would probably be the smoothest way and most likely way that you'd be able to make the Champions League at the end of the season. But like I said, with those are going to be the 2 most important games, but it's important to keep in mind that they've got to win pretty much all the rest of their other matches throughout the season too. So every match for Arsenal is going to count. So I just want to be really clear before I wrap up this main topic here. For my fellow Arsenal for my Arsenal fans who are out there panicking right now, don't worry. There's hope. There's a lot of time for the rest of the season. I'm not an Arsenal fan myself. I'm being empathetic by employing what I'd want my team to do here, but if I'm Arsenal, I'm hoping that they draw to Chelsea and that they beat United. At that point, you're looking at really, really solid hopes throughout the rest of the season to make it to that Champions League spot. All right, guys. So, what do you think Arsenal will be finishing at the end of the WSL season? Where in the table do you think they'll get to? Do you think they'll pull off a miracle and win the league? Do you think they'll get the Champions League spot? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Also, VivMino11, thank you so much for the question. I had so much fun doing this, so let's get into the third main topic.